Greetings, listeners. Howard and I spoke with a very special guest. He is the chair of an AmLaw 100 firm. We discussed how the firm has grown through bold mergers, reimagined its culture, and put business professionals, not just lawyers, at the helm. You'll hear our guest Frank Tone on the real challenges facing law firms today, the impact of AI and remote work, his genuine curiosity about PE, and how his firm's remote office is setting new standards in engagement and productivity. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to the Future is Bright podcast. My name is Chris Batts, and joined by my co-host, Howard Rosenberg. Howard and I are at the center of law firm talent and strategic growth here in New York City. Howard is a partner and the head of talent intelligence and acquisitions at Barrett's and Brunel, and I advise and facilitate corporate law firm mergers and private equity investments in both consumer and corporate law firms at Columbus Street. And today, we have a very exciting guest, Joe Glynias, chair of Husch Blackwell. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you and Howard having me.
So, Joe, you've been in the chair, as the chair, since last April. Is that correct?
That's right.
And you are a still practicing attorney in employment law.
Yeah, that's right. In our firm structure, we have a full-time non-lawyer CEO who genuinely is responsible for and has the authority to run the law firm. She's supervised by our executive board, and I chair that. But because of the role that she plays, I'm allowed to maintain my practice, which is a big part of the way we approach all elements of leadership at the firm. We do as much as we can to keep our lawyers in a position to lawyer and have as much about the business administration elements done by business professionals. So I get the benefit of continuing to practice labor and employment law.
That's amazing. And so you bring up something that has been happening, but it's not been widely adopted yet, which is putting in business professionals in executive positions at the firm. And is it, forgive me, her name is it Jamie?
It is. It's Jamie. Jamie, ironically, her last name is Lawless.
Okay.
Jamie Lawless is our CEO.
And talk to us a little bit about her impact at the firm since she's been there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I've referred to her a couple of times as CEO. Technically, she's our chief executive, not being an attorney. She's the officer title doesn't apply, but she's our chief executive. She's our second non-lawyer chief executive. So to give you maybe a little more background than you're asking for, in 2012, we reorganized as a law firm to not be organized by practice areas and governed by practice area leaders. We are organized by our industry focus. So we have 6 different strategic business units that are all industry focused. And at that same time, we created a CE role that would report to our executive board, which is a 13-member board. And over the next several years, the individual who occupied the CE role, it was and is a lawyer. And the chair was a lawyer, obviously one of our equity partners as well. When we combined in 2016 with a law firm named White, Hirschbeck and Dudek, which was a smaller, largely Wisconsin-based firm, they were being run by a non-lawyer business professional who did an excellent job growing their law firm over the course of 7 or 8 years that he was there. So part of the motivation when we did the combination was we had for a long time really invested in the notion that we wanted business professionals to run the business. And we really wanted our talented lawyers to do the things that they do so well, litigating cases, running deals, managing client relationships, all that stuff. So we saw an opportunity there to have some runway, some transition between our existing equity partner chief executive and this non-lawyer business professional. And over the course of 18 to 20 months or so, we determined that this individual who had been at White Hirschbeck would do a fabulous job managing our firm. And he had built the relationships necessary in order to have the credibility with our partners to govern. And so we made him our first non-lawyer chief executive in 2018. He stayed in that role up until 2023 and into 2024. And that's when Jamie Lawless, we hired Jamie, who was at Baker McKenzie before, to come in and be our next and now current non-lawyer chief executive. Her impact has been fantastic. The benefit to us is, even though there certainly are lawyers who are equipped to run a large organization, being a lawyer doesn't necessarily provide you with the skills necessary to run a 500, 700, 1 billion, some 100 million, $1 billion organization. There's a lot that goes into that beyond just the practice of law. And so she brings a business acumen and a business discipline to the firm that I suspect many of our lawyers wouldn't be able to bring on their own. She has already achieved incredible cost savings that have actually led to better product from our business professional side. And the full story of that is detailed and long. I'm happy to share as much as you want to hear. But the result has been exactly what I said. We are spending less and getting better quality. And that's the kind of thing we always wanted to get from a business professional that maybe we could get from a lawyer, but couldn't have as much confidence as we did and do in bringing her in. So her impact has been great. And plus, specific to her, no doubt, and certainly to our prior chief executive as well, she's an incredible people person. She does a wonderful job building relationships. And as the two of you know, it can be a real challenge to build relationships with 1,000 lawyers, all of whom think they're the smartest person to ever grace a law firm with their presence. I'm just kidding. Our people are wonderful. But that's an element of being an attorney, and she does a wonderful job navigating that rocky road.
So, Joe, speaking about being an attorney, what was the aha moment for you to attend law school? Why did you want to be an attorney?
So it's funny. My father was an attorney for 40 years. And he was a very prominent trial litigator here in St. Louis, Missouri. One, litigator of the year in Missouri. I couldn't go into a courtroom in my life without having somebody say, "Are you Stefan's son?" So well known. And I respect and love my father very much. But probably like most teenage boys, certainly while I was a teenager, the last thing I wanted to do was be exactly like him. I shouldn't say most, maybe just me, but that was my path. And it felt, having nothing to do with him, it just felt a little fatalistic, a little thoughtless, because it's what I knew to think, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I was really curious to see what else was out there. So I had no intention of going to law school or ever being a lawyer. And then, in fact, I went to college at the University of Missouri in the journalism school. And I was in the advertising sequence, and I was really intoxicated with the notion of being in advertising. It was a sexy idea of a smoke-filled room at 2:00 in the morning, somebody throwing a ball against the wall and coming up with a great slogan. I did some internships, and they weren't like that. And then a friend of mine was studying for the bar studying for the LSAT before our senior year. And he had the prep book out, and I looked at it, and frighteningly, I thought it was kind of fun. And so I did a few of the exercises with him. And as I was doing it, I realized, I think this maybe matches up with what my skills and interests are. So I said, well, I'll take the LSAT and see what's up. I enjoyed the prep class. I did well on the test. And then I, said, well, we're going to go to law school. And immediately, the process of the analysis of law became something that I knew was my path. So that's why I went. And I always had in my mind that my practice was going to look exactly like my father's, who was, at the time, we didn't have as much specialization in the practice of law, right? Somebody would hand him a file and he'd go to trial, and he would literally do 100 trials a year, 20 of which would be jury trials. And that's how simple it was. And so I thought that's what my life would be. And that's not typically what the practice of law is these days. And then I ultimately found employment law, which I really paired with well. I was always obsessed with civil rights and the notion of being able to help so many employers provide an opportunity for employees to do the thing that we all have to do, which is have a job that provides for our families. And that's a really important part of life. And all of our clients, mercifully, are wonderful individuals, wonderful organizations who want to do well by their people. And so I'm blessed by being in a position to literally help tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees go to work in places where they're treated the right way, and of course help those employers navigate all the elements that are around the practice of law, the employment of people. And so that's why I came to the practice of law. That's why I've stayed with it, Howard. I don't think that I could ever really leave it. That's why I'm glad this job is 50-50. I love being a lawyer.
So tell us a little bit about the journey at Husch. Like, how did you arrive? And then obviously, how did you get to be chair of the business currently?
So I went to Washington University School of Law here in St. Louis. And as a 1L, I was fortunate enough to have done well. and I had a number of interviews. And having grown up here, I was fairly familiar with the law firm environment. Of course, my father being a part of it, I was fairly familiar with it. And so I had an idea in my mind of which firms I preferred. And this interview was my first one. And candidly, I didn't think much of the firm going into it. I wasn't against it. I was more excited about some of the others. So I thought, great, this will be a wonderful dry run. Get some practice in and being interviewed and giving answers to questions. And I went and I had an incredible experience. Every conversation I had was engaging. It was real. It was entertaining. It was meaningful. And even though I loved my law school experience, not everyone at law school is the same personality as me. And everyone I was meeting with here at the firm were very similar personalities. And I thought, well, this is a good fit. Imagine how great these other firms are going to be that I'm more excited to go to. And thinking, great, I'm so glad this has gone in this sequence. And all the other interviews I had were wonderful, but they weren't this. And I think that was revelatory for me to be like, a place that you weren't excited to go to impressed you so much that it's not just equal to, it's more appealing to you than the others. This must really be the place. So that's how I wound up here. At the time, I was pursuing a JD MBA. So I was going to have 3 summers. And my plan was, I'm going to summer in St. Louis. I'm going to somewhere outside of St. Louis because most of my life had been in St. Louis or Columbia, Missouri. And I really wanted to have a different experience. And see, after that second summer, then determine where I wanted to go for my last summer. And that would be the place I would go work. And so I looked in Chicago, New York, DC, and LA. Was fortunate enough to have opportunities in all those places and ultimately chose a wonderful firm in Chicago, who at the time was 1,200 lawyers. And I thought, my gosh, this is so big. I can't imagine. It's crazy. Had a wonderful experience. I went from being one of 6 summer associates here at Husch Blackwell, and I was one of 90 summer associates in the office in Chicago. But I said, I had a wonderful experience. But ultimately, really was drawn to the atmosphere of a full career that I saw for myself here. And by that, I mean having a direct and intimate relationship with my clients. This other firm it's more of a brand name, it's more institutional, and they have wonderful client relationships, but they're genuinely with the firm. And I felt as though the lawyers who were involved in those relationships were a little more fungible. They were more of a service provider. And I really wanted to be a counselor to my clients. And I felt that this environment both offered me the opportunity to be at a big firm and also have that relationship. And fun little element there, I then scrapped the MBA part of the JD MBA, called up Husch Blackwell, said, can you take me a year early? Thinking nothing of it at the time. And of course, it was a ridiculous imposition, but they were gracious enough to let me in. And so I did it. And I was always drawn to the labor and employment for the reasons I said. I also really love the folks in the group. They were very focused on my development, both as an attorney, as a business professional in the practice of law. And it was a great fit. So I started, and at the time that I started, there were new regulations coming out around the white collar exemptions under the Fair Labor Standards Act, which was new to everybody. And one of the partners said, hey, kid, go learn this stuff. And that, without knowing, was right at the beginning of the huge tidal wave of FLSA collective action litigation. It became a niche for me, and I always stayed. And so I ultimately was our hiring partner, and then I was leading our labor and employment practice for a while, then on our executive board for a long time, and now find myself in this role.
And Joe, can you walk our audience through your tenure at the firm as they've grown? Give them a history of kind of those key mergers we discussed.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well as how you've described what growth looks like now. That's kind of the difference between actual acquisitions.
Yeah, you bet. So I started a law firm that was called Blackwell Sanders Pieper Martin. We merged with a law firm called Husch Kneppenberger in 2008 to create Husch Blackwell. Later that year, we also combined with, I should say, at that time, both firms were about 300 lawyers, roughly similar in revenue, profitability, all that stuff. So it really was a merger of equals, and we doubled in size. Later that year, we combined with a smaller IP boutique in Chicago called Welsh & Katz, about 50 lawyers. And that was the law firm for several years. Like most law firms, certainly at the time, and even now still, there was a great interest in moving into Texas. And we got very fortunate in 2013 to combine with an incredible law firm called Brown McCarroll that was largely based in Dallas, Austin, and smaller office in Houston. And that was about 60 to 70 lawyers. And we remained as that firm until about 2016 when we combined with the White Hirschbeck Dudek Group, largely Wisconsin-based, with about 120, 125 lawyers. That's the last combination that we've done. We have certainly brought in groups, sometimes large groups, not larger than 50 that I can recall, but plenty of 15 to 20 person groups, but no other firm combinations since then. So at the time that we did that, in 2017, once the merger was digested, we were just over 700 lawyers. At the end of this last year, we're 1,130 lawyers. That's 60% growth, or 422 lawyers more since that time without a combination. I think it speaks meaningfully and substantially to the notion that the way we go to market and the way we service our clients fits very well with a very broad segment of the legal consumers that are out there. Specifically, we are up and down the Midwest, we are coast to coast, and because of our virtual office, we are in 40 some odd states. And we are able to staff and serve all those customers, all those clients in ways that not every law firm can do. Certainly others can, but not every law firm. And I think that makes us appealing, certainly to many clients and to many attorneys who have a client base that matches well with the types of rates that we charge and the types of services that we can provide. So our approach to growth all along that time has been focused on the same thing that it's focused on now. To your question, Chris, where's our focus? Our focus continues to be in a position that we always want to grow in a way that allows us to serve our clients in the way they need to be served. And I know that's fairly generic and broad and probably something that most every firm would say, but that has been the greatest catalyst to our overall growth, being very conscious of what our clients need as anything else. I mentioned the headcount growth. Our revenue growth has been even greater. In 2017, we were about 350 million. This year, we're closing just over 780 million. So about 124% growth. So much more revenue growth than headcount growth. And I think that's because that the way we've grown has allowed us to provide more and deeper services to our clients. So sometimes that means if we need to grow into a practice area that our clients need that we don't have anything in, then we do that. Sometimes it means adding to our substantial bench in certain areas. For example, we've been the #1 healthcare law firm according to the AHLA for the last several years, and now most recently by the ABA. So we add to that group a lot. We have an incredible higher ed group. We add to that group a lot. We have an incredible renewable energy group, and we add to that group a lot. And there's a lot of our toxic tort group is incredible growth. And I could go on and on. There are many that I'm leaving out that are significant. And so that's where we focus. So we're never driven by geography at all. Geography can be helpful, but it's not, we don't have a strategy of saying we need to be in a place. So it's guided first by how does whatever the lateral acquisition entail, whether that's an individual or a group or a whole firm, how does it further the needs of our clients in a way that we aren't doing right now? And then also, and this is the next biggest thing, and it's really 1A, how does it fit in with our culture? And every firm's that way. I mentioned before about my law school experience and my interviewing experience. They were fabulous law firms. It's just and they're still around. They're fantastic law firms. They're just different. They interact with each other differently. They interact with their clients differently, and that doesn't make it bad or better or worse. And so it's important that when we have these combinations and we bring people in, that they see the world the way we see it. That's the best path to long-term success. So it's serving the clients and matching our culture, and that's going to remain our strategic growth plan.
So Joe, on one of our pre-calls, you mentioned you sleep fine at night. So what again, with all the the war for talent, the AI technology, private capital coming into the industry, what are your challenges? Something must keep you up at night. What are you worried about going forward with things?
I'll answer your question with just a brief, silly little story before I do. I played a lot of sports as a kid, and I loved it. And on occasion, we'd be playing a team that I knew was going to be a big matchup, or I was going to have a big individual matchup, and I'd have some anxiety on the way to the game. And my dad would say to me, "Listen, win or lose, your mother's still going to love you after the game." I might not, but your mother will. Despite the levity of that, I sleep well at night because the things that are most important are safe. But to answer your question, the challenges that get most of my attention is making sure that, you mentioned the war for talent. It's real. It's real on every level. We aren't competing with the AmLaw 5 or 10 for the most part for talent. So they don't keep me up at night. Although AmLaw 50 firms call on our partners all the time. And certainly our associates. But that threat, that concern of will we lose our people to somewhere else is always something that has my attention. An element of that hopefully never has to be in the front of my mind is compensation. And we all do this for a living. This isn't pro bono work. We all need to get paid, and we're lucky that we're in a profession that pays us well. But I say all the time, if your goal, and it's not a bad goal, if your goal is to make the last dollar available, this probably isn't the firm for you. We invest a lot in the development of our people, not just our attorneys, all of our people. That investment comes at a cost. I mean, there's no question I could make more money at other law firms. We are very careful about where we set our rates. We could set our rates much higher, and of course, we'll have increases like every other firm. But we try to be very judicious about the way in which we do that. How we show up for our people, bonuses that we give to our staff, all of these things eat away at that, and it's part of our culture. Our pro bono activities, just straight charitable donations, all of those things, they define who we are. So the part that keeps me up at night is not losing somebody to a higher dollar figure. That's always going to be there. What does keep me up at night, Howard, is if we lose people because we haven't done our job. And when I say we, I really mean the leadership. We haven't done our job living the promise that we've made to all of our people, which is that we're going to create an environment and a culture that's appropriate for you. If you're going to give to us, your best efforts, if you're going to focus on your clients, if you're going to focus on being good and decent to the people in this firm, then we want to make sure that this place remains an atmosphere where you feel recognized for that and rewarded for it. If we fail on that, that keeps me up at night. And I say that, I mean, these are ideological, in some ways, Pollyanna-ish type things to say, but I don't know. Like I said, it's the difference between one firm or another. And I believe that people are here because of that difference. So I've got to make sure I've got my eye on it. And it's possible to lose it. You can take it for granted and lose it. So we spend a lot of time and attention. And fortunately, we're of a size now where we don't have to tolerate people who don't fit into the culture, even if they're at the top of our comp sheet. And there have been times when we've had to make those moves. And every time we've done it in the year that we've done it, the results at the end of the year were record-breaking numbers. So we are fortunate now that we aren't beholden to anyone or even any group of people, and we can live that thing that's most important. Beyond that, the things that might apply to the industry more generally, Howard, I'm very interested in AI. I'm very interested. I mean, we are big consumers of it. We have been all over it from the beginning. I go to these law firm leadership meetings, and there have been times now a little longer ago where many other law firm leaders just say, we're not touching it. We have confidentiality concerns. Some of our clients won't let us use it. We don't want to be first in this area and be the guinea pig, all of which are valid concerns. We were deeply invested at the time. We remain deeply invested. We have great vendor relationships that build a lot of bespoke products for us. All of that having been said, it is far from revolutionized the way that we do law right now. We include it in a lot of the things that we do, but it's not like the way in which we practice is unrecognizable in 2026 to the way it was in 2023. Is that coming? I'm really curious to see. And I'm glad that we have a lot of people who have become expert on it. So that certainly has a lot of my attention, even though it doesn't scare me. I find it very exciting. I had lunch with an accounting partner yesterday, not in our firm, an accounting firm, who's got all the same thoughts that we do on it. And I see it as an accelerant, as an enhancement. I really see it as a way to be a better provider of legal services to our clients. get rid of the stuff that's, time consuming without being valuable. There was a time in law school when I needed to research a case. I went to the library, I grabbed a book, and I'm checking the pocket part and all that stuff. And then Westlaw and LexisNexis took off, and that research takes no time. And so I see this as being that. Get rid of the things that consume time that aren't valuable and allow us to focus on the truly artistic elements of what we do and provide better service.
Joe, let me jump in and ask you a question along with AI. So AI is a huge topic. This past year was front and center. Private equity is also. What's your thoughts on that? Is that keeping you up at night?
Well, it's funny because there was an article I read this morning that was talking about private equity, and I was excited to read it because I read almost all of them when they come out. But this one was about serving private equity clients and how the benefits of the great rates that they pay, which is true. I'm assuming that's not your question.
No.
Private equity infusion into law firms is really compelling to me. I want to understand, and there was a fabulous article that I read about a week and a half ago that I sent around to our leadership that had a very sober and practical explanation of why and how private equity can be helpful to law firms and what the risks are. Right now, what I see as the most compelling prospect of involving private equity in the law firm operations is really two things: funding the business operations of the organization, so obviously more like an MSO model, but then also having available funds if there are moments in which you need to make an expenditure where you don't have cash on hand to do it. I'd be hesitant to use the latter to acquire laterals. That doesn't mean I wouldn't, and I can't be talked into it. It's just, as I sit here right now, I tend to think that the laterals at our firm who do best have an attitude of, I'm going to show you the second I get there, which to me, I interpret to mean I'm going to start generating revenue quickly. It won't be immediate. Obviously, there's the lag with every lateral. But I don't feel like we need to float them so long that we need an outside infusion of capital in order to do it. If, however, there were some big AI, for example, project that we wanted to undertake that was going to take a major infusion of capital, or we have a committee at Husch Blackwell called Husch Blackwell, the Bold Committee. And its job is to come up with one initiative each year, which is bold. And we're going to focus on and put money into it. Right now, we have something called HB Consulting. It's going to take some capital. We have an incredible opportunity. That might be a moment where an infusion of outside capital will be helpful. I could see the prospect and involvement of PE being very meaningful there for this firm. On the business operations part, just getting back to the point that I made earlier about the evolution of this firm, we already have so much of that built into the way we do business that I could certainly be talked into the benefit of shifting that cost to someone else, but it's not a need for us right now. We don't have to seek outside capital in order to fund a change in the firm. And of course, underlying all of it is going to be the concern that I think any one of our partners would have, which is, I'm not sure I want to give up my equity. It's not going to be like a lot of other products where you can sell an interest at a multiple. I don't know. I mean, no one has approached me in the PE world and said, "Hey, Joe, we're interested in buying into Husch Blackwell." But that's going to be a conversation that I'll be very open to and very curious to hear what people have to say. Because right now it eludes me a little bit as to how it would be such a meaningful opportunity that our folks, I think, en masse would be interested in giving up their equity.
So piggybacking off of Chris's comment about the question about private equity, private capital, just curious, Joe, to get your response on, do you get a sense that the partners, your colleagues, the idea of building enterprise value in this day and age where you come into the firm, you work for 20, 25, 30 years, and then you kind of leave, but you don't have any kind of long-term equity in the business. I mean, that there is a tension in the model at the partnership level in this day and age with that. Just was curious to get your thoughts on that.
No, Howard, it's wonderful, right? I mean, in the past, law firms dealt with it in a variety of ways, unfunded pensions, and that's problematic. It's that caused all kinds of issues. So it's not a great solve. It's discomforting a little bit to think I build a $10 million practice and I'm going to hand it off to 3 people and I'm going to get nothing from that. Whereas if you're in the financial services world and you're a financial advisor, you shift your book, and over the course of 5 years, you get paid off for it, and it's great. So some ability to achieve what you described would be fantastic. And I think, I know our partners would be very interested to hear what that looks like. We don't have a mandatory retirement age, and I mentioned that to say that we have people practicing for many years afterward, after like a 62 or a 65, something like that, where many firms would have a mandatory retirement. And I suspect a lot of them do that because they can't figure out what to do, or figure out what else to do. I kind of see myself that way. So I don't think their involvement in the continued involvement in the firm is a need for income. It's stimulating. They're good at it. They enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. But even them, of course, they would love to have some sort of equity interest that pays out over time. So a shorter answer to your question, Howard, I'm sure they would be interested in hearing about it. I think it would take some approach from some private equity firm to say, we've got a deal and here's what it looks like. What do you think?
It's interesting because one of the themes that Chris and I kind of always explore and talk with law firm leaders is that obviously the free agency model is alive and well, and we talked about it earlier on the podcast. And I think the issue is like it's going to become a perennial issue now, and it's only going to increase. And equity is important. Long-term equity is important, and I don't know if the industry has really fixed that element of the model currently.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And wouldn't it be compelling if we had the evolution that the Big Four have had, where they now have solved for that, and they've done a lot of other things too that we would love to do.
Yeah.
Joe, where do you think law firm leaders underestimate the pace of change?
So first of all, I should preface this by saying that in my role, I've gotten to meet so many law firm leaders and been blown away by the skill and acumen and experience that so many of them have. So I'm slightly loath to say that any of them underestimate anything. But I think that we all are in a position where we have to give attention to the pace at which rates have increased over the past several years. Our CFO, if he's listening to this, would be sitting there saying, we should be increasing at the same rate as all the other firms. We haven't been. And he's not wrong. We haven't been.
I think he knows my CFO.
Yeah, they're on a listserv together. But there has been incredible consistent growth in the rates that we charge. And that is certainly something that's gone on for many, many years. I mean, it's when we discussed this the other day, I know we chatted about the fact this isn't a new problem. In fact, I remember when I was considering the practice of law and I talked to my father about it, he was highlighting to me the very real risk that they were all going to get bought by accounting firms very soon. And here we are in 2026, and it's not meaningfully farther along than it was then. I mean, Arizona's sort of cracked the door open a little bit, but so I suspect that this will be an issue for the rest of time. But with the advent and the increasing usage of AI, where we get it all the time from our clients. They are adopting it in their in-house teams. They are using it. They are performing functions that they would otherwise send to us. And they are asking us when they engage us, how are you going to use it? And how am I going to save money by the fact that you're using it? There are going to be technological developments that are going to going to impact the way in which a billable hour can be charged. And whether that's the volume of hours or the rate at which they're charged, it's going to impact that, maybe in both instances. And so those kinds of technological advancements are going to impact rates. Now, does that mean we're going to make less money? Not necessarily. I hope it has an impact on the usage of the billable hour. I know that our firm, and I have this conversation with law firm leaders all over the place who are in the exact same situation, have been loud proponents of alternative fee arrangements for many years. And I will tell you that almost every client relationship that I begin, I start with a proposal for an alternative fee arrangement. Most of the time, for reasons that I understand, the clients are more comfortable with the familiarity of a billable hour. Now, I'm fortunate that much of my practice is billed on alternative fees, and I think it's a wonderful arrangement between client and counselor, because the billable hour, obviously, it's at tension with the needs of the client. I mean, we make more by doing more work. Well, they just want a result. They don't care how, they prefer it takes as little time as possible, which makes sense. And I think the alternative fee feeds into that better. So my hope is that the technological advancements will allow us to potentially push more into AFAs. And to your question about, what aren't we appreciating about the rate of change? I kind of think that the freedom with which we've been able to increase rates over the course of the past few years is going to slow in some way, at least be impacted over the course of the next 5 years, probably in ways in which we can't fully appreciate right now. There was another article I read yesterday that even though rates have gone up and profitability and revenue has gone up considerably, the costs have gone up considerably. Expenses for law firms have gone up considerably because we're having to pay people so much and other goods cost so much. And a lot of firms are investing a lot of money in those overhead costs and in those non-partner related costs and in their partner related costs to be available to take advantage of this great moment where we're making so much money with the rates we've been able to charge. But if the music stops and we've got all those costs, that becomes burdensome in a way that's, it requires the type of change that no leader of any organization wants to make. So
on the people side, with the technology advancement, what are you predicting about the shape of the firm in terms of the staffing of assignments and the traditional pyramid structure that exists in all law firms? How's that affecting Husch going forward?
So it's funny, if we were to go to the CFO again, one thing that you could look at with our law firm that's different than some others is our equity partners work considerably fewer hours, bill considerably fewer hours than most other law firm equity partners. And so we already push a lot down. Now, every law firm relies on a lot of associate work, but we're already sort of in a situation where the types of work that some equity partners do, we've already staffed off to others. I suspect we are going to, I mentioned HP Consulting. I suspect we are going to employ a lot of non-lawyers to perform a lot of services in a consultant basis that otherwise we would have had to do with associates and paralegals. So we're already built for that. And I suspect we're going to see more of that. Certainly lots of law firms use alternative legal service providers already and have for some time, and I suspect that potentially could continue. But I definitely see this technology, Howard, as affording opportunities to get answers to legal questions that have existed historically from people other than lawyers, and then allow the more creative and more analytical elements. So in terms of what do we do with the data that has been produced by these technological tools? How do we use it to our clients' advantage? That, I think, is where our lawyers are going to be spending more of their time. Now, whether that means fewer associates, fewer partners, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will be that.
Joe, I would love for you to kind of close and share on something that you shared with us yesterday, and I was impressed by the numbers. So when we had a discussion around tech, you were like, how about I talk about this, which is unique to our firm? Can you talk about your remote office?
Yeah, I'd love to. So our remote office is called The Link. Obviously, everyone went remote during COVID. We started our remote workforce many, many years ago. The first one that I can remember was in 2006. One of our very valuable attorneys in Kansas City is married. Her spouse was moving to Nashville. We didn't have an office in Nashville, and we couldn't imagine the notion of not working with her anymore. So she began working for us out of her house. The expectation was she had to fly back to Kansas City 2 weeks a month, and that's how it worked. There may have been others before, but that's the one I remember. And she remained just an incredible asset to our firm. And the 2 weeks back in Kansas City, over time, lessened and pretty much just working from Nashville.
How many attorneys do you guys have now in your Link office?
In the firm, we have 1,130 attorneys. In our Link, we have 800 people, 240 attorneys. Go ahead, Chris.
That's amazing. That's like 20%, or between 20 and 30% is wrapped up in this concept of remote for your firm. That's significant.
It really is. And the funny thing is, we all work remotely in one way or the other. We have 23 brick and mortar offices. We have people in 42 states, but all of us are interacting with others, whether they work in a brick and mortar or not, virtually or by phone or however, every day. Recently, we, like every other firm, conducted a survey of our people to explore a number of things, including engagement. And by a huge margin, the most engaged population in our firm is our link professionals, our link attorneys, and our link professionals. And like I said, it's not even close. And I have conversations with law firm leaders all the time, many of whom are done the return to office, mandatory 3 to 4 days a week, whatever, asking me about this. How do you do this? How do you maintain the culture? How do you develop young attorneys? There is no single answer. In the same way that I believe there's no single answer to accomplishing those things in a brick and mortar setting. You have got to be intentional about it. We have lawyers here in our St. Louis office right now. We have lawyers in our St. Louis office who come in every day who do nothing. Well, I shouldn't say that, nothing. Who aren't some of the bigger contributors to the culture of the firm or to the development of our people. They do it in their own way, and we're a big firm. We can allow for everyone's different contributions. But it's not a part of their intentional day, put it that way. So because we are forced in the remote environment to be even more thoughtful about it, we've experienced so far better results. Now, time's going to tell. 5 years could go by, 10 years could go by, and we could determine that we have not developed any good lawyers. We have lost the culture that we had, and we'll make a change. But I will know this, or I do know this. We all had to do this in 2020 and 21, everyone. And we all managed through it and managed well through it. In 5 years, in 10 years, we're going to be one of the few who are going to have a little data that will tell us whether or not remote work works. Are we retaining those partners? Are they advancing to partnership? Have they been able to develop client relationships? Have they been able to develop teams of young associates who trust them? All the other firms are going to have to go on a gut.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. And who knows, like I said, maybe we'll turn out to be wrong.
The value, well, particularly the cost savings on a remote workforce that is effective and striking all the culture and performance boxes, I mean, that's wildly beneficial. And it's good to hear that that's continuing to thrive. And you guys are kind of really leading the charge within Big Law to do that. Let me, if I may, this has been a wonderful conversation, and Howard and I both know we could talk to you for hours. This is just so much fun. There's so much to discuss. But Joe, please finish this sentence for me. The future is bright because?
I've thought about this a lot. The future is bright because of the things that have gone on in the past 5 years, and I'll explain that. If you go back to the trauma of George Floyd, if you go back to the challenges of COVID, if you consider our current environment, certainly it's been an uncertain environment for law firms over the course of the last 18 months. I got an email before I came up here, unfortunately, talking about the current civil unrest going on outside of our Minneapolis office. It's bright because what we do, and I believe particularly what lawyers at large law firms do, is we solve problems. I am drunk with the fantasy of the practice of law because of the social contract, because our laws are the rules. This is how we got together and said, this is how we make this work, guys. This is how we all live together in health and prosperity. But they didn't just fall from the mountaintop. They took a lot of people like us to think about, all right, what should we be aware of? What should we provide for? How do we change what we've been doing? How do we improve upon what we've been doing? The practice of law is appealing to a lot of people for a lot of reasons. But I tell people all the time, if you want to be a lawyer because you want to make money, you pick the wrong thing. Certainly at a firm like ours. It's hard. It's a lot of time. It's stressful. It's straining. It's emotional. It can be withering. And if you don't do this because you value above all else the value in helping other people then you have missed the central calling of what it is to be a lawyer. So when you ask me, the future's bright because I believe that because maybe not more than ever, maybe it's always been this way, but to me it is undeniably true that the world needs people like us to do what we do. And the future's bright because we sit in a wonderful position to provide that service where we can. That excites me.
Joe, one last quick question. Besides your dad's amazing advice, what's been the greatest advice that you've been given during your career so far?
Can I offer you two? One speaks to my role as a chair and one speaks to being a lawyer. My very first law firm leader event that I went to, I was like 3 weeks into the job, and there were 80 other law firm leaders there, and everybody knew I was brand new. And everyone was so gracious in offering up advice. And it was not ever condescending. It was wonderful. There's a real fraternity, sorority around what we do. Like at most firms, there's just one of us, right? So you find comfort in finding the other ones at their firms. But one piece of advice that I got there, and I have to change the language just a little bit. I don't know if we are PG rated or what, but it was very simple. It said, the moment you forget how hard it is to be a lawyer, get out of that job. And that's great advice and something I share with our leaders all the time, because it's easy, as we all are, we're all prisoners of our own experience. It's easy for me to sit here and say, man, this job is hard. I mean, there's this personnel issue, or there's this law firm combination potentiality, or there's this client conflict, or we've got a high stakes profile matter, whatever, and think that's hard. But being a lawyer is hard. And I should never forget that. So that's my best advice that I got in my law firm leadership role. The best advice that I got in the practice of law came from somebody who's been a mentor to me for a long time. And it's not really specific to the practice of law, but it's damn useful. And he stole it from somebody else, which was most people spend 95% of their time thinking about themselves. And so if you want to be interesting and memorable to them, get into their 95. I view client service that way. I need to be, when I'm interacting with my clients, I need to be more focused on what matters to them than how I perceive it. I've got to really understand what their issue is, not just the legal element. I mean, we're built for that. And heck, at this point, we got AI that can do half of that. But I got to understand what they are, what they need, in a way that only a human can do. And so I think about that a lot, getting into their 95, not because it's going to make me memorable to them, but because it's going to make me more effective in serving them.
Thank you.
Excellent advice. Joe, how can people find you, follow you, find you on social media?
Yeah. So the easiest way, candidly, is through our website, www.hushblackwell.com. My last name is Glynias for anybody who would struggle with that. And I think all of my social media platforms are linked there on my website bio.
Excellent. Joe, it's been an honor and pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Guys, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it and how much I appreciate you including us.
Thank you.